I've always believed that some secrets are better left buried. At 58, with my prematurely white hair that I've grown to love despite initial resistance, I thought I'd seen enough of life's dramas to handle anything. My name is Eleanor Mitchell, and last spring, while helping my younger sister Catherine prepare for her second wedding, I discovered how wrong I was. Catherine's first marriage had ended 15 years ago. Her ex-husband Richard had been unfaithful, leaving her devastated but ultimately stronger. Now, at 53, she was marrying James, a kind widower she'd met through her volunteer work at the local hospital in our hometown of Fairhaven, Connecticut. I'd flown in from Chicago, where I'd built my life as a college professor after leaving our small coastal town decades ago. "Ellie, could you help me sort through some of these old boxes?" Catherine asked 3 days before the wedding. We were in her attic, hunting for our grandmother's pearl earrings, something borrowed, something old all in one. "Of course," I replied, pulling a dusty cardboard box toward me. Inside were photo albums from Catherine's first wedding. I almost set it aside when something caught my eye, the corner of an envelope peeking out from between the pages of the main album. "What's this?" I murmured, carefully extracting it. The envelope was yellowed with age, unsealed. I shouldn't have looked, but something about it felt important. Inside was a handwritten letter dated just 1 day before Catherine's first wedding. "My dearest Catherine, by the time you read this, I will be gone. I cannot stand by tomorrow and watch you marry Richard knowing what I know. What I've done. The guilt has become unbearable. Richard and I never meant for it to happen. That night, when you were in Boston visiting your mother, we both had too much to drink after the rehearsal dinner planning. One terrible mistake that we both regretted immediately. But there's more, and this is why I must leave. The baby I'm carrying, it's his. I've told him I won't interfere with your lives, that I'll move away and never contact either of you again. He's begged me not to tell you, convinced that what happened was meaningless and that he truly loves you. Perhaps he does. Perhaps it's kinder to let you live in ignorance. But as your oldest friend, I cannot bear the weight of this deception. Yet I'm too cowardly to face you, so I'm leaving this letter where I know you'll eventually find it, though hopefully after enough time has passed that the shock won't destroy you completely. I'm so sorry. I love you, which makes my betrayal all the worse. Forever regretful, Melissa." My hands trembled as I read the last line. Melissa Davis had been Catherine's maid of honor, her best friend since childhood. She had indeed disappeared the night before the wedding, leaving only a brief note claiming a family emergency. Catherine had been hurt but understanding. They'd never spoken again, and now I knew why. I sat frozen, the letter in my hands feeling as heavy as a stone. Catherine had eventually discovered Richard's infidelities, but not this one, not with her best friend, and certainly not the child that had resulted. She had no idea. "Find anything interesting?" Catherine's voice startled me. She stood in the attic doorway, smiling expectantly. I hastily folded the letter and slipped it into my pocket. "Just looking through your old wedding album," I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the chaos in my mind. "Oh, burn that," she laughed. "Or at least hide it until after the wedding. I don't want any bad juju." I forced a smile. "Found the earrings yet?" "No, but we still have time." Time. Yes, I had time, 3 days before the wedding, to decide what to do with this explosive information. Should I tell my sister about a betrayal from 25 years ago? Would it serve any purpose except to reopen old wounds? Richard was out of her life, and Melissa too. But somewhere out there was a person, now an adult in their mid-20s, who was Catherine's husband's child with her best friend. That night in the guest bedroom of Catherine's beautiful colonial home, I couldn't sleep. The letter seemed to pulse under my pillow where I'd hidden it. I kept thinking about Catherine's life after her divorce, the years of rebuilding her confidence, her identity. She'd transformed her pain into purpose, volunteering with women recovering from similar betrayals, eventually meeting James through that work. Would this revelation unravel all that healing? By morning, I'd made my decision. I would find Melissa Davis first. After 25 years, she owed my sister some answers before I decided whether Catherine needed to know the truth. It wasn't difficult to track her down. Social media makes finding people remarkably easy these days. Melissa now lived in Portland, Oregon. She had never married, and according to her profile, she worked as a nurse. There were no photos of any children on her public profile, but that didn't mean anything. I called in a favor from my friend Daniel, who worked in alumni relations at the university. He found her phone number through one of those people finder services. With shaking hands, I dialed. Hello? The voice that answered was tentative but familiar enough to transport me back decades. Melissa? This is Eleanor Mitchell, Catherine's sister. The silence that followed was so profound I could hear her breathing change. Eleanor, she finally said, her voice a whisper. After all this time, is Catherine all right? She's getting married on Saturday, I said, cutting to the chase. And I found your letter. The one you left in her wedding album. Another long silence. Then, I see. No, I don't think you do, I continued, surprising myself with the edge in my voice. Catherine never found that letter. I did, 3 days ago. She doesn't know, Melissa. She never knew. The gasp on the other end of the line was audible. But Richard eventually told her, surely? When they divorced. The divorce was about his other affairs. This particular betrayal never came to light. Oh my God, Melissa's voice cracked. And the baby? Yes, I said, my heart racing. What happened with the child? She's 25 now, Melissa said softly. Her name is Emma. She knows Richard is her biological father. I told her when she was 18. She's never met him, that was part of our agreement. He sends money sometimes, but has no relationship with her. Does she know about Catherine? She knows her father was married to someone else when she was conceived. I haven't told her Catherine's name, but she could find out if she wanted to. I took a deep breath. Melissa, Catherine is finally happy. She's marrying a wonderful man this weekend. I need to know, do you think she needs to know about this now? After all this time? The line went quiet again. Finally, Melissa spoke, her voice thick with tears. I've carried this guilt for 25 years, Eleanor. Every day I've wondered if I did the right thing by leaving, by keeping Emma from her father's life. I don't know what's right anymore. What does your heart tell you? That was the question that had kept me awake all night. What was I protecting by keeping this secret? And who would be hurt if it came to light? I need to think, I said finally. But Melissa, I may need you to come to Connecticut. I'll be on the next flight if you ask, she replied without hesitation. I've owed her this conversation for 25 years. After we hung up, I sat staring at Catherine's wedding invitation on the nightstand. Together with their families, Catherine Mitchell and James Whitaker request the pleasure of your company. Families. Such a complicated word. By the next morning, I'd made my decision. Some truths demand to be told, no matter how painful, but timing and delivery can make all the difference between destruction and healing. I just had to find the courage to be the messenger. The day before Catherine's wedding dawned bright and clear, the perfect New England spring day. The rehearsal dinner was scheduled for that evening at James's large Victorian home overlooking the harbor. I'd barely slept, my mind churning with what I needed to do. You look tired, Catherine commented as we sat having coffee on her porch. Wedding jitters by proxy? She smiled, radiant with happiness. Something like that, I replied, attempting to return her smile. Kath, do you have some time this morning? There's something I need to talk to you about. Her face immediately clouded with concern. Is everything okay? Mom's okay? Mom's fine, I assured her. Our mother, now 82, was living in a retirement community in Florida and would be arriving that afternoon for the wedding. This is about something else, something from the past. She tilted her head, studying me. You're being mysterious, Ellie. That's not like you. Let's walk down to the beach, I suggested. Our childhood home where Catherine still lived was just a quarter-mile from a small, private beach. It had always been our place for serious conversations. We walked in silence, the familiar path winding through dunes dotted with beach grass. The rhythmic sound of waves greeted us as we emerged onto the sandy shore. It was deserted this early in the morning, the May air still carrying a slight chill. We sat on a weathered wooden bench that had been there since our childhood. Catherine wrapped her cardigan tighter around herself. Okay, you're scaring me a little. What's this about? I took a deep breath and reached into my pocket, pulling out the letter. I found this while we were looking for Grandma's earrings. It was hidden in your first wedding album. Catherine frowned, taking the folded paper. What is it? It's a letter. From Melissa. Written the day before your wedding to Richard. Her frown deepened as she unfolded the letter. I watched her face as she read, the initial confusion shifting to shock, then disbelief, and finally a profound pain that made her physically recoil. "No," she whispered, her hands shaking. "No, this can't be real." I called her, I said gently. "Yesterday." She confirmed everything. Catherine stood abruptly, the letter clutched in her fist. 25 years, she said, her voice hollow. For 25 years I believed Melissa had a family emergency. I was worried about her. I tried to find her afterward. Did you know that? I thought something terrible had happened. She laughed bitterly. And something had. She was pregnant with my husband's baby. Kath and Richard, she continued, pacing now. All those years of marriage, he knew. He had a child out there. She stopped suddenly, turning to me with wide eyes. A child. I have a, what? A stepchild I never knew about? Her name is Emma, I said quietly. She's 25 now. Catherine sank back onto the bench, her legs seemingly unable to support her. Does she know about me? She knows her father was married when she was conceived, but not much else. Melissa told her about Richard when she was 18, but they've never had a relationship. Catherine was silent for a long moment, staring out at the ocean. Finally, she asked, "Why did you tell me this now, Ellie, the day before my wedding?" The question hit me like a physical blow. Had I been wrong? Should I have kept this secret, at least until after the wedding? But looking at my sister's face, wounded but strong, I knew I'd made the right choice. Because you deserve to go into this marriage with a clean slate, I said. Because I couldn't bear the thought of this secret possibly emerging later and causing you pain when you're building a new life with James. And because. I hesitated. Because what? She prompted. Because Melissa is on her way here. She'll arrive this afternoon. I thought you deserved the chance to speak with her, to get answers, before you walk down the aisle tomorrow. But only if you want to. Catherine inhaled sharply. She's coming here? Today? I nodded. Only if you want to see her. I can send her away. Catherine stood again, smoothing her clothes with trembling hands. Does James know about any of this? No, of course not. This is your story to tell, or not? She nodded, biting her lower lip, a gesture so familiar from our childhood that it made my heart ache. I need to think, she said. I'm going to walk for a while, alone. I watched her walk away along the shoreline, her white hair catching the morning light, her shoulders straight despite the burden I'd just placed on them. In that moment, I was reminded of how strong Catherine truly was, how she'd weathered storms before and emerged intact. 3 hours later, she returned to the house. I was sitting in the kitchen, pretending to read but actually staring at my phone. Melissa's flight had landed. She was in a rental car, heading to her hotel in town. I want to see her, Catherine said simply, standing in the doorway. But not alone. I want you there, Ellie. Of course, I said, standing immediately. She's just checked into the Harbor Inn. Tell her to come here, Catherine said, her voice steady. This is my home. My territory. I texted Melissa, who responded immediately that she would be there in 20 minutes. Catherine and I waited in silence in the living room, the grandfather clock in the corner marking the minutes with solemn ticks. When the doorbell rang, we both startled. I rose to answer it, but Catherine placed a hand on my arm. Together, she said. Melissa Davis stood on the porch, 25 years older than when I'd last seen her but instantly recognizable. Her auburn hair was now streaked with gray, and fine lines surrounded her eyes and mouth. She wore a simple blue dress and clutched a small handbag as if it were a lifeline. Catherine, she breathed, her eyes filling with tears. Eleanor. Thank you for allowing me to come. Come in, Catherine said, her voice revealing nothing of her emotions. We sat in the living room, an awkward triangle of women bound by a decades-old betrayal. No one seemed to know how to begin. The silence. I have questions, she said directly. And I expect honest answers. Melissa nodded, her hands twisting in her lap. Anything. Everything. Did you love him? The question was pointed, direct. Melissa flinched. No. It was one night of terrible judgment. We were both drunk, both emotional about the wedding. He was nervous, I was jealous, if I'm being completely honest. She looked down. I'd always envied what you had. Your confidence, your happiness. It was a horrible, selfish moment that I've regretted every day since. And the child Emma. Catherine's voice softened slightly on the name. Tell me about her. Something changed in Melissa's face, a softening, a pride that transcended the shame of the conversation. She's wonderful. Smart, kind. She's in medical school now, at OHSU in Portland. She wants to be a pediatrician. She hesitated. She has your smile, actually. It's always been a painful reminder. Catherine closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, they were shining with unshed tears. Does she know you're here? Does she know about me? She knows I'm visiting an old friend from Connecticut. I've never told her your name, but she's smart. She could find out if she wanted to. Has she ever asked about meeting Richard? Melissa shook her head. When I told her about him, she was angry not just at him, but at me. It took time for her to understand. She's curious about him, I think, but she's never pushed to meet him. And what about me? Catherine asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Has she ever been curious about the woman her father was married to when she was conceived? Melissa looked directly at Catherine, unflinching despite her obvious distress. Yes. She's asked about you. I told her you were a good person who deserved better than what we did. The room fell silent again, heavy with unspoken emotions. I sat quietly, bearing witness to this painful reunion, this excavation of buried truths. I'm getting married tomorrow, Catherine finally said. I know, Melissa replied. Eleanor told me. I'm happy for you, Catherine. Truly, are you? Catherine's voice had an edge now. Because the last time I was about to get married, you slept with my fiancé and then disappeared. Melissa flinched as if slapped. I deserved that. Yes, you did, Catherine agreed. Then, surprisingly, her voice softened. But that was a lifetime ago. We were different people then. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the garden where tomorrow's ceremony would take place. When she turned back, her expression was resolute. I need time to process all of this, she said. But before you leave, I want you to know something. I forgive you. Melissa gasped softly, tears spilling onto her cheeks. Catherine, not for your sake, Catherine continued. For mine. I wasted too many years being angry at Richard. I won't waste any more being angry at you. She took a deep breath. And I want to meet Emma. Not right away, I need time, but someday. She's innocent in all of this, and she's connected to me in a way. Melissa nodded, wiping away tears. She would like that, I think, when you're ready. I have one more question, Catherine said. Why did you leave the letter in my wedding album? If you were truly leaving, never to return, why not just take your secret with you? Melissa looked down at her hands. Because I was a coward, but not completely without conscience. I couldn't bear to tell you to your face, but I couldn't bear the thought of you never knowing, either. I thought you'd find it eventually, after the honeymoon, perhaps. I never imagined it would stay hidden for 25 years. Catherine nodded slowly. Life is strange that way. She glanced at the clock. I have to meet with the florist in 30 minutes. And I need to decide what to tell James about all of this. Will you tell him? I asked gently. Catherine considered this. Yes, she said finally. No more secrets. Not in this house, not in my new marriage. She looked at Melissa. Thank you for coming. For answering my questions. Melissa stood, understanding she was being dismissed. Thank you for seeing me. For listening. She hesitated. Would it be all right if I attended the wedding tomorrow? I understand completely if the answer is no. Catherine and I both stared at her in shock. The audacity of the request was breathtaking. But then Catherine did something that astounded me even more. She laughed, a genuine laugh that broke the tension in the room. Melissa Davis, you always did have nerve. She shook her head, but her expression wasn't unkind. No, you can't come to my wedding. But maybe someday, you can come to dinner. With Emma. Melissa nodded, accepting this boundary with grace. I understand. And Catherine? I truly am happy for you. After Melissa left, Catherine and I sat in silence for several minutes. Are you okay? I finally asked. She sighed deeply. No. But I will be. She looked at me with a small smile. You were right to tell me, Ellie. Thank you for not keeping this from me. I wasn't sure, I admitted. I was afraid it would ruin your wedding. Nothing could ruin tomorrow, she said with surprising conviction. I love James, and he loves me. This, she gestured to the space where Melissa had been, this is old pain. It matters, but it doesn't define me anymore. She stood, straightening her shoulders. Now, I need to find James. We have things to discuss before we say our vows tomorrow. As I watched her walk away, her white hair gleaming in the afternoon sunlight, I marveled at my sister's resilience. The truth hadn't broken her, if anything, it had reinforced her commitment to honesty in her new relationship. But the story wasn't over yet. The hardest part still lay ahead, the wedding day itself, when past and present would converge in ways none of us could predict. The morning of Catherine's wedding dawned clear and perfect, as if the weather itself was blessing the day. I helped her dress in the simple ivory sheath she'd chosen, elegantly appropriate for a woman in her 50s embarking on her second marriage. You look beautiful, I told her truthfully as I fastened our grandmother's pearls around her neck. Her white hair was swept into a sophisticated updo, with a few tendrils framing her face. How did it go with James last night? I asked cautiously. After the confrontation with Melissa, Catherine had gone to speak with her fiancé alone. She hadn't returned until late, and we hadn't had a chance to talk. Catherine met my eyes in the mirror. It was intense, but good. James was shocked, of course, but mostly on my behalf. He was angry at Richard and Melissa for their betrayal, but he understood why I wanted to tell him before our wedding. She turned to face me, taking my hands in hers. He asked if I wanted to postpone the wedding, to give myself time to process everything. But I don't need more time, Ellie. This revelation is about my past, not my future, and my future is with James. Relief flooded through me. I'm so glad, I said, squeezing her hands. And I'm sorry again for the timing. Stop apologizing, she said firmly. You did the right thing. She glanced at the clock. The guests will be arriving soon. Is Mom ready? I helped her get dressed an hour ago. She's having coffee on the porch with James's sister. Our mother, thankfully, had been spared the drama of the past 2 days. At 82, with her increasingly fragile memory, we decided not to burden her with a story. Some secrets could remain buried. The ceremony was set for noon in Catherine's garden, which was in full spring bloom. Chairs had been arranged in a semicircle around a simple arbor twined with roses and ivy. Only 60 guests had been invited, family and close friends, many of whom had known Catherine through both the best and worst times of her life. As the guests settled into their seats, I took my place at the front as Catherine's matron of honor. James stood with his best man, his brother Michael, both handsome in dark suits with matching boutonnieres. The string quartet began playing Pachelbel's canon, and all heads turned as Catherine appeared on the arm of our cousin Robert, who was giving her away. She looked radiant, her smile genuine as she locked eyes with James. Just as she reached the halfway point down the aisle, I noticed a commotion at the garden gate. A young woman had appeared tall, with auburn hair and striking features. Even from a distance, I could see Richard in her face. Emma. My heart stopped. How had she found us? What was she doing here? Catherine noticed the disturbance and turned. I saw her freeze, her bouquet trembling slightly in her hands. The music continued, but everything else seemed suspended in time as bright and unexpected guests stared at each other across the garden. Then, unbelievably, Catherine smiled. She said something quietly to Robert, then continued her walk to the altar where James waited, confusion evident on his face. The ceremony proceeded as planned, with Catherine and James exchanging heartfelt vows they had written themselves. I kept glancing at Emma, who had quietly taken a seat in the back row. She sat perfectly still, her expression a complex mixture of emotions I couldn't begin to decipher. After the final blessing and the couple's first kiss as husband and wife, Catherine surprised everyone by taking the microphone from the officiant. Thank you all for being here today, she said, her voice clear and strong. Before we move to the reception, I'd like to say something. She looked around at the gathered faces, then directly at Emma in the back. Life is full of unexpected turns. Some bring pain, others bring joy. The true measure of living well is how we navigate those turns, with honesty, with grace, and with an open heart. She reached for James's hand. Yesterday, I received some news that shook me. A truth from my past that had been hidden for 25 years. A murmur ran through the crowd. I learned that my first husband had fathered a child with someone else during our marriage. A daughter I never knew existed. Gasps and whispers erupted among the guests. I saw our mother's confused expression, the shocked faces of old friends who had known both Catherine and Richard. That daughter, Catherine continued, is here today. She gestured toward Emma, whose face had gone pale. I didn't invite her. I didn't even know she existed until 2 days ago. But somehow, she found her way here, to perhaps the most awkward family reunion imaginable. A nervous laugh rippled through the crowd. James squeezed Catherine's hand supportively. I don't know what will come of this unexpected connection, Catherine said. But I do know this: life is too short for bitterness. Too precious for regret. So today, as I begin a new chapter with my wonderful husband, I'm also opening my heart to possibilities I never imagined. She looked directly at Emma again. I don't know you, but I'd like to. Not today, today is for celebrating with my husband. But soon. With that, she handed the microphone back to the stunned officiant and, taking James's arm, walked back down the aisle as the quartet hastily resumed playing. The reception was a blur of well wishes, champagne, and curious glances toward Emma, who remained at the periphery of the celebration. I made my way to her as soon as I could slip away from my duties as matron of honor. You're Emma, I said, extending my hand. I'm Eleanor, Catherine's sister. She took my hand, her grip firm despite her obvious nervousness. I know. I've seen photos of you on my mom's old albums. How did you find out about the wedding? I asked, genuinely curious. Mom came home yesterday evening acting strange. When I pressed her, she broke down and told me everything: where she'd been, who she'd seen. That Catherine was getting married today. Emma shook her head slightly. I couldn't just sit with that information. I had to see her for myself. Does your mother know you're here? No, Emma admitted. I left Portland on a red-eye last night. I wasn't even sure what I was going to do when I got here. I certainly didn't plan to crash the ceremony. She looked embarrassed. I just wanted to see her from a distance, maybe. I never expected her to acknowledge me, especially not like that. I studied this young woman, this piece of my sister's complicated past, who now stood before me as a flesh and blood reality. Catherine meant what she said. She would like to know you, when the time is right. Emma nodded, blinking back tears. I'd like that too. I've wondered about her my whole life, even before I knew the full story. She glanced toward the reception tent where Catherine was laughing with guests. She seems remarkable. She is, I agreed. One of the strongest people I know. Emma checked her watch. I should go. I have a flight back tonight. She paused, looking uncertain. Could you give her my number, when she's ready? Of course, I said, taking the card she offered. And Emma? Thank you for not approaching her directly today. That was thoughtful. She smiled wryly. The last thing I wanted was to ruin her wedding day. I've caused enough disruption just by existing. You're not responsible for the circumstances of your birth, I said firmly. Remember that. After Emma left, I rejoined the reception, finding Catherine for a moment alone. She's gone, I told her, but she left her contact information. For when you're ready. Catherine nodded, taking the card and slipping it into a hidden pocket in her dress. What did you think of her? She seems lovely, I said honestly. And she has your directness. Catherine smiled at that. I meant what I said during the ceremony, Ellie. Life is too short for bitterness. When Richard cheated with all those other women, I let it nearly destroy me. I won't make that mistake again. She looked toward James, who was chatting with guests across the tent. Besides, I have too much to be grateful for. The reception continued into the evening, a joyful celebration despite, or perhaps enhanced by, the dramatic revelation. As darkness fell, fairy lights illuminated the garden, and Catherine and James shared their first dance to At Last by Etta James. Later, as they prepared to leave for their honeymoon, Catherine pulled me aside for a final private moment. Thank you, she said simply, embracing me. For what? I asked, holding her tight. For finding that letter. For telling me the truth. For being here through all of it. She pulled back to look at me. Some secrets need to come to light, no matter how painful. You were brave enough to make that happen. I shook my head. You're the brave one, Kath. The way you handled everything, Melissa, Emma, the announcement at the wedding. I was in awe. She smiled, tucking a strand of white hair behind her ear. Well, at 53, I've finally learned that we can't control what happens to us, only how we respond to it. She glanced toward the waiting car, where James stood patiently. And sometimes, the most painful revelations lead us exactly where we need to be. As I watched them drive away, rice and rose petals still clinging to their clothes, I marveled at how differently this weekend had unfolded than I could have possibly imagined. A secret letter, hidden for 25 years, had indeed caused gasps at the altar, but not in the way anyone could have predicted. In the end, it wasn't the revelation of betrayal that defined the day, but the choice to meet that betrayal with grace, forgiveness, and an open heart. My beautiful sister with her crown of white hair had transformed a potential tragedy into a testament to her strength. And somewhere in Portland, a young woman was flying home with the knowledge that she had been seen, acknowledged, and perhaps, in time, would be welcomed. Not all secrets are better left buried after all. Sometimes, bringing them into the light is the only way forward into a future where truth, however painful, makes room for new beginnings. As I walked back through the empty garden, gathering forgotten programs and stray flowers, I thought about the power of hidden words, of buried truths. How they wait, patient as seeds, for the right moment to emerge. And how, when tended with care and courage, they can bloom into something unexpected and beautiful.